I've known Dr. Kalyalya for quite some time. I've worked with him. He's got a very rich CV. So Dr. Kalyalya, could you kindly just tell us who Dr. Kalyalya is?
Good morning, everybody. Thank you very much, Dr. Mape, for inviting me to this very important summit. As you heard already, I'm Kalyalya, Denny Kalyalya. Currently, I'm governor of the Central Bank of Zambia. I started on this particular assignment. I was appointed on the 27th of September, but I recently just took my position after ratification, but I had been there before from 2015 to 2020 August. Prior to that, I had been executive director at the World Bank, representing 22 countries in Southern Africa, East and West Africa. That included our own country, Zambia. I did that role for 2 years. Prior to that, I was the alternate executive director for the same constituency. But before joining the World Bank, I was at the Central Bank as Deputy Governor Operations, a role I played for 8 years. Prior to that, I was Director of the Economics Department for quite a number of years. But I joined the Central Bank in 1996. And then in 1997, I had the opportunity to go to the IMF for a 1-year attachment as a special appointee, where then coming back, that's when I became Director Economics. My starting work, the career was at the University of Zambia as a lecturer in the Economics Department. I did my training here at UNZA, my first degree in economics and the business administration. That's what it was called at the time. In the bank, I was privileged to be part of the financial sector development program, which the government had introduced in 2004. So I was the chairperson of the steering committee and the vice chair of the technical committee and the vice chair of the steering committee. The steering committee was chaired by the secretary to Treasury. So I think I'll stop here. Thank you very much.
Now, Governor, the world is grappling with serious challenges at the moment in the social space as well as in the climate space. And from the deliberations of yesterday, it is quite clear that a lot of money will be required to resolve these issues. And what became clear is that the current financing models as structured are not adequate to deliver the outcomes that we want. And because of that, the issue of green finance is popping up. And it's clear that the current models are not inclusive enough. Some of them are actually financing activities which are contributing to the challenges we are trying to resolve. So from your perspective as central bank governor, or from the Bank of Zambia's perspective, just to kickstart this discussion, green finance, what is it? And then when we say greening the financial system, what are we talking about?
Thank you very much for that. Maybe I should have also indicated that you have another role which actually touches on what you are saying. I happen to still be a co-chair of the IDA 20 negotiations, which we are hoping to conclude in next month, the 14th and 15th of this coming month. But why am I bringing that? I'm bringing that because one of the special themes of IDA 20 is precisely this on climate change. And there is quite a lot of interest to address issues of the environment, because the main overarching theme of IDA 20 is actually building back better, greener, inclusive, and resilient. So it's in that context that I'm bringing up this. Now, when we talk of green finance as such, really, we are looking at all these initiatives that are taken by the private sector, the public agents, for start like businesses, governments, NGOs, banks, you name it, in developing and promoting, implementing, as well as supporting projects that are sustainable. And by sustainable, there we are really looking at the issues of climate mitigation, climate adaptation, and resilience through the financial instruments that they deploy. So that's really what green finance to us means, that we have all these initiatives that are geared towards having a sustainable impact. Related to that, when now we talk of greening of the financial sector, we are, if I may break it into three components. One is that development of environmental and climate change risk management. I think the issue of risk management is quite topical. The climate change poses a number of risks to us, to our lives and our livelihoods. So the idea of green is to really look at how we can deploy risk management to the issues of the mitigation, adaptation, and resilience. The other aspect of that is the inclusive aspect. When you are building a system, there is an ecosystem. So if you leave anybody outside that, you are running a risk, because they could be undoing, like you have rightly pointed out, that some of the initiatives that are happening, they are actually running contra to what you are supposed to be achieving. So inclusiveness is extremely important in that process. And to obviously manage this whole process, you need to mobilize resources. And the resource mobilization is extremely important, but you must do it in a manner that is going to contribute to a sustainable economy. So that's really what we are talking about, green finance and greening the financial sector. I hope that helps.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think it's quite clear in terms of what these concepts entail. Now, the challenge of climate are quite clear in terms of how they are going to impact the world. But I think one thing people are not very clear about is when they talk of climate and when they look at the central bank's mission, they sometimes question, how is climate change relevant to a central bank mission? Why should the central bank be concerned with climate change? What risks does climate change introduce into the economy that are of concern to the central bank, particularly in light of its mission?
Very interesting indeed. Indeed, sometimes people don't quite appreciate what the central bank does. In our case here, the mandate of the bank, the primary objective is price and financial system stability, with a view to contribute to sustainable development. Now, you have all, I'm sure, observed that in the recent past, let's say over the past decade or so, we have a lot of natural calamities. Droughts have become very common. Floods, flash floods, I think just here last week, we had the reports of many places having been affected by flash floods. Temperatures have risen. We are in November now. Today is the last day of November. But you can see that the rainfall pattern has changed quite drastically. Now, what did has that got to do with the central banking? Well, the thing is that these floods, they do affect lives and livelihoods. They disturb the way of living of people. They wash away crops, bridges get damaged, which makes logistics quite difficult. The drought also has its own devastating effects. Things die. Now, in that context also, you find that when, for example, we take crops being washed away, it means that that crop will not be available, and it creates a shortage in the system. So that shortage will be reflected in the rise in prices of commodities, agricultural commodities. Therein comes the connection with our mission of managing price stability, which is having low and stable inflation. So if food prices go up, clearly that has an adverse effect on our mission. How do we then manage to bring inflation in line with the stated goal? Also on the financial stability side, banks and the other financial service providers will invariably have extended support to some of those projects which are adversely affected by climate change. So that introduces a risk of financial stability. So it's quite core to our operations, the issue of climate change. It's not really something which is out there and we are just trying to find a way of getting involved. It is core, front and center in our operations. So as we speak, one of the things we are trying to do is to come up with the guidelines that when you are lending, that is as a financial institution, you must take that into account. What kind of projects are you supporting and how can you support your clients so that they contribute positively to the environment? So I hope that helps to situate the central bank in this debate on climate change.
Thank you, Governor. It's quite clear that this event is quite relevant to the central bank's mission. Now, clearly, the investment that will be required to transition to what we are calling a green economy will be enormous. And the financial sector definitely will have a very central role to play, which brings me back to the major stakeholders in the financial sector. We need, as you are saying, you want to introduce guidelines to guide the financial sector in the way they conduct business. But we know that already the United Nations has issued the principles for responsible banking. Mm-hmm. And we know that in Zambia, international active banks, 6 of them, which have subsidiaries in Zambia, have already signed up to the principles of responsible banking. This is a framework for action to accelerate the banking industry's contribution to the SDGs and the Paris Agreement. These banks already are committing to the principles. There are about 6 principles. The disclosure, of course, the market will be interested in knowing how much traction the banks are making in this space. In addition to the standards, are there any other incentives that the central bank is trying to release to engage or to encourage the financial sector to start behaving in a manner that helps mitigate these challenges? Are we likely to see the development of a green finance taxonomy? And then how is the central bank leveraging the fact that the market has taken a conscious step, and these banks have about 60% of the assets of the banking industry under management. So the bulk of the assets of the banking industry, the institutions have already committed to align with the principles of responsible banking. How can the central bank leverage this space? Do we see a development of a green finance taxonomy coming?
Very true. And I think one of the things, let me start from the premise that in Zambia, if you look at the landscape of the banking sector, we do have a lot of these international banks. And I think the banks that you have referred to belong to that category.
Hello?
So one of the
Yes.
advantages sometimes is that of being in that situation, because some of these practices start from their home countries. So they extend this. Yes, there are sometimes when we are concerned about the extension of some of those practices from their home countries, but this is one area where I think those extensions are positive for our environment. So clearly, when we are looking at the supervision of these institutions, we are also party to those international principles that you have alluded to. So it makes it a lot easier for us to deal with those companies or banks in terms of playing the demonstration effect to the others. So we are, I must confess that we are in the early stages of developing those guidelines, which will help to identify what kind of incentives they can be provided. We have in the past, I think as part of promoting that, they set up certain things like the recourse to statutory reserve ratios. But I think more importantly, the bank in February this year did actually set up a fund, a credit guarantee scheme, where we are actually looking to working with yourselves as Impact in NABI, the operation, to try and see how we can deploy this for the good of our economy. So as an institution ourselves, I think we haven't made as much traction in terms of identifying the specific incentives that we can provide. But our colleagues in the Securities and Exchange Commission, I think they have gone ahead of us by providing some guidelines on the green bonds. So that is something that we are working together with them, as well as the Pensions and Insurance Authority. In fact, like what I said about the floods and all that, the insurance companies actually are more exposed to that, because they would have invariably been called in to indemnify those who get affected in that fashion. So this is work in progress, but is one which we are committed in line with our green policy. We are one of the few, I think, here who moved on to set up a green policy back in 2018. If you allow me, I can read some of the
the commitments that we have made as part of the green policy. I think this is one of our policies where actually we have made a statement. Many of the policies, we don't have a statement. We have a green statement. So some of the elements of that are that commitment to complying with all applicable legislations relating to the environment aspects, commitment to reducing its environmental footprint, that is the institution, the bank. Carbon dioxide emissions caused by the bank shall be reduced by lowering consumption of energy and natural resources. Now, communication of the bank's commitment to its employees and clients. So clients here is broad-based. We are talking of the banks, we are talking of you, the general members of the public. Regular monitoring of the bank environmental performance through regular evaluations. Now, one of the things that already which we are doing is that when the banks are extending facilities to their clients, we are insisting that they should demonstrate how they are incorporating environmental considerations in that process. So it's work in progress. Let me just make that point.
Thank you very much, Governor. And I would just like to acknowledge your mention of the collaborative work we are doing in trying to de-risk the targeted medium-term refinancing facility through the introduction of the credit guarantee scheme. Yeah. Now, Governor, it's good that you've talked about the green policy. I think it's a milestone. And clearly 2018 was quite early for the central bank. So you are quite ahead of the market, I should say. I want to come to an issue, which is the issue of technology. We know that technology has begun to shape digital financial services and creating innovative solutions. And it's quite apparent that technology can be leveraged to progress the green finance agenda. And the transition to a green economy will require harnessing of data and analytics in the process of transforming the banking system for the better. But we have the issue of cyber security and data protection laws. Mm-hmm. How does the Bank of Zambia view the new cyber security and data protection laws in terms of them enabling or restricting the desired traction towards a green financial system?
Yeah, you are right. I mean, the bank for its work, uses a lot of data. The clients that we have, the banks have been referred to, use a lot of information and the data. Now, it's one thing, I think, to say that these can be restrictive, and another to appreciate their positive side. The banking sector is prone to attacks. It's quite vulnerable because everybody, that's what I think all of us seated here, we woke up from home, our homes, to try and get here because we see that there's something we can gain from that. And the banks and the central bank, we are mobilizing resources. So everybody would want to get access to that. So hacking and the other aspects of gaining illegal entry to this information is a preoccupation of some of the people. So on the positive side, what we are saying is that there is need to have laws that help deal with that. So from that perspective, we think that it's a welcome development, the cyber security law. We actually had the opportunity to participate in its formulation. Now, our focus really is to see how we can safeguard the amount of information that come into our possession. You have seen globally what happens when there's an illegal access to people's information. Because all of us here, I'm sure, we have a bank account that you rely upon. So imagine if without your authority, someone gains access to that. So it's at that point that you actually appreciate having a law that protects your hard-earned money. There may be some aspects which could be improved upon, and our view is that those are things we can deal with. But overall, we think that data protection, cybersecurity are extremely important. As we are sitting here, there are people who are trying to get access to information that is not theirs. And this time of the year, as a matter of fact, there's a lot of phishing activity. People are trying by all means to gain access to people's money. So this resource mobilization we're talking about is huge, it's not small. So if we don't protect that, I think we run a big risk. There's actually also another aspect which perhaps doesn't come in that way, which is money laundering, because the laundered money can come through that process. So being able to detect that is extremely important. So much as we may have some concerns here and there without laws, but look at the bigger picture. What are they trying to do? They are trying to protect all of us from people who could misuse or take advantage of what is going on, because these resources are aimed at helping us mitigate the climate effects, help build resilience, adapt to these environmental changes that are happening every day. Now, if people then were to gain illegal access to those resources that we have mobilized with that objective in mind, I don't think it will make us meet our objectives. So it's from that perspective that we think it's important to have cyber security laws in place, data protection laws. We can improve where perhaps they may be inhibiting further development of technology. But technology is here to stay. Here we are today. We are able to reach out to as many people as possible because of technology, and is still evolving, and it will continue to grow to higher levels. Nowadays, I think it's a lot easier to even conduct off-site inspections of banks using technology. So we embrace it, but at the same time, we must be aware of its shortcomings or the risks that come with it. So it's from that context that we think we should look at these laws, not really focus on their shortcomings, because we'll be missing the bigger picture, what they are trying to do.
Thank you very much. As a last point, how you see what the central bank will focus on in the coming years? What should the market expect in terms of the greening of the financial sector? What are the one or two key issues?
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. We do have a strategic plan, which is running from last year to 2023. And in that plan, we have two focus areas, which are financial inclusion and financial stability. So really, like I indicated before, and you also pointed out, in financial inclusion is very, very important. Currently, our financial inclusion indicator shows that we have 69.4 Zambian adults having access to finance. So as we push that agenda, I think the issue of environmental protection, climate change is critically part and parcel of that. So as we bring in people into the system, I think an awareness is to be made to them that these are some of the things that you should be aware of about the environment. Because let's take an example. Somebody borrows money and he puts in a project, but in that project, there are lots of threats to the environment around them. Let's take, for example, cutting of trees. That has got a lot of devastating effects. Whereas, you see, you thought that yours was just to do a small business on the side, but the environment around you is shifting. So you must take care of the fact that it's not only you, we are looking at a system. So that systemic connection is extremely important for us. The second one is financial stability. It is also very critical. I think people with the COVID-19 may not have appreciated the pressure that was exerted on the financial system. So a lot of work was being done behind the scenes to ensure that you have a system that is functioning. Yes, intermediation may have suffered to a large extent because of the reduced activities. So COVID-19 has also brought other threats to the environment, which we must be alive to. So as a central bank, our view is that we need to build a sustainable economy. When we talk of growth, we want growth which is sustainable. When we talk of inflation, we want inflation which is sustainably low, and that can only happen if we really interact with the environment positively. We have to cut out practices that do harm to the environment because we will not have sustainability. So there's a lot we are doing in terms of ensuring that our operations and the institutions that we regulate and supervise also follow. Because if we all do this, I think we can look to the future with optimism. As it is now, there are a lot of challenges that we are facing, but together, I think we can do a lot. And the partnering with yourselves is something that we have embraced, and we look forward to see how we can really ramp this up so that others can follow suit. So Zambia is in a very precarious situation, but the government here also has responded by even establishing a ministry for green economy. So we look forward to really collaborating in a manner that will help save our planet. If we have to have sustainable development, it's critically important that we have practices that do save the planet. Otherwise, we are a place where emissions, we haven't caused much, but we are affected. So we can't say it's them there, us we are okay. We are not. We are on the receiving end, and we will deploy all our instruments that we have in a manner that will help safeguard our environment. So that's really, I'm appealing to you all. Let's partner. If you have ideas, we are more than happy to receive them. We just a little anecdotal information here. We had wanted to actually plant trees, but it became quite problematic. It became politicized. Where do you go and plant the trees? When it should just be an easy thing. I'm sure, Dr. Mwape, you recall, when we are growing, if you are flying from Kitwe to Ndola, or from Ndola to here, you saw a lot of green. there are a lot of plantations. I don't think you see them anymore as much. What you see are houses, you know, and the smoke in the air. What has happened to us? Why can't we be planting trees? You know, my personal appeal is that for all of us here, in your backyard, if you have a backyard, plant a tree, a fruit tree, if you like, because the fruit tree, you eat the fruit and you also help to mitigate some of the damage that is happening to the environment. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much. And thank you for opening the doors for us. And on that note, I would like to thank the audience. Can we please give another clap to the governor?